We are now down to the final episode of the 10-part series of What If the Arrowverse Was Marvel.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is...
Hello everybody and welcome back to Pitch This here on the MrEliMac channel. I'm your host, MrEliMac, and I am here again, as I said, up top with the final part, the final episode of this grand series of What If the Arrowverse Was Marvel. But not only is this the last episode of this series, this is the last video of the year. We are ending 2023 with this little series, and I think that it's only appropriate since last year I ended it with What If the MCU Was the DCCU. It only feels appropriate to end this year with What If the Arrowverse Was Marvel, and it has been quite the journey, with the first video coming out quite a while ago. Actually, I want to say it came out all the way back in October, I want to say, or maybe even November. I'm not 100% sure. But with that video starting out with the analogs to the first two seasons of Arrow, which was the Captain America show, and now we're ending it with the final two shows that we're going to be talking about, which is the analog to Flash Season 9, which is Iron Man Season 9, and the analog to Superman and Lois Season 3, which is Spider-Man and MJ Season 3. But before I get into the pitches, before I talk to you about these ideas that I have, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you can be up to date with all the videos I have here on the channel. Also hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified whenever a new video like this comes your way. And also leave a comment down below on what you have thought about this entire grand design of the Arrowverse as Marvel. What have your thoughts been on the overall ideas? I would love to hear what you have thought overall. And yeah, without any further ado, let's get into it with the Flash Season 9 analog, Iron Man Season 9. So I'm just going to run down the main cast first. And with this one, just like the prior season and even the season before that, this has the graphic novel situation where it is split into two separate main sagas, with the one right in the middle sort of just being random episodes or an interlude in between. I'm not really going to focus on the interlude, because the interlude, if I were to focus on one of them, it would be the one that is sort of where Oliver comes back, which would be like the return of Steve Rogers as a Watcher and just them going on that little crazy adventure. But I'm not going to really do all that, because I think everyone understands that since that episode did happen in Season 9, I would definitely do a episode of Tony Stark gets infected with something, Steve Rogers comes back, and those two have to team up to stop the big bad of that little story, which I believe the big bad would have been the main antagonist of the first half of Season 1, but I can't remember that off the top of my head, to be quite honest, so we're just not even going to worry about that. But I am going to talk about who the main cast are right now, like I do with everyone. So the main cast of Iron Man Season 9 would be Tony Stark, Iron Man, Pepper Potts Stark, Bethany Cave, Rumiko Fujikawa, Angelica Jones, aka Firestar, Bill Foster, and someone that is getting promoted to a main cast member. It would be Jake O, aka Eagle Star, since he is the chill Bane analog. He is the person that gets promoted, who is no longer sort of, no one's like wondering which side of the law he's on. It's sort of more established like, oh no, he's a good guy now. And that's sort of firmly establishing that he is a good guy with this cast. And now over to the recurring characters. I'm gonna do the ones that are appearing throughout the show mainly. And the main recurring characters are Happy Hogan, who is being demoted from main cast to a recurring cast because Joe West was demoted to a recurring cast member, but mainly I think it was because that Jesse L. Martin wanted to take time off whenever he wasn't really needed for the show, and I think that's what they did for Joe West, so I'm doing the same with Happy Hogan. Daisy Johnson, aka Quake, and Monica Chang returning for working with S.H.I.E.L.D. They are the S.H.I.E.L.D. representatives of the show. And then finally, Bambi Arbogast, who is returning as sort of the final season therapist, because I think therapy is a good thing, and I think Tony Stark needs a lot of therapy, and I think throughout all of his time he needs therapy. And I mean, especially during what would happen in this show, since it would be the final season, I would want it to sort of wrap up the major instances of, hey, we're having the main story of Tony wrap up, and so we're just gonna have sort of moments where we sort of deal with Tony sort of going through each of the seasons prior and sort of, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what happened in season 1 and sort of how that has affected you. And so it would sort of be the finale when he goes to his last session, would sort of be, okay, Tony, let's talk about what's happened this year. And Tony would describe it and be like, but you know what? I'm okay. And then we sort of go off with there. But anyway, let's move on to the first graphic novel number 8, which would be inspired by the Rogue War graphic novel in Flash Season 9, which saw, like, that graphic novel saw the debut of Red Death, and I would have Laura Kinney in this season as well as sort of a character that would be helping Tony going up against the bad guys. And I want to mention the heroes first, actually, because that season had Barry teaming up with Goldface, Chillbane, and Pied Piper to fight off against these new baddies. And I'm not going to have sort of villains debut and sort of do a face turn here. Instead, I'm doing it differently. I'm having Tony team up with Wolverine, Laura Kinney, but also some characters that debuted all the way in Season 1 that we haven't seen in a while, and that's sort of what we're doing with Season 9, bringing characters back in Season 1 that we haven't seen in a while, like Clinton Barton's Hawkeye and Simon Williams' Wonder Man. Those two would return from Season 1. We haven't seen them since, and this is their way of sort of capping off their stories and sort of being like, oh, we're reintroducing these characters who were very much major characters in the past, and we're sort of bringing them in now to sort of deal with this big thing that is happening. And so some of the villains, 3 of the villains that we're actually seeing in this show, who I'm not going to mention the main antagonist yet, are who would have been recurring characters throughout the frequent seasons, like just recurring baddies that would have popped up, but now they're sort of more in a prominent role, which are Arthur Parks' Living Laser, Gary Gilbert Firebrand, and Donald Gill Blizzard. Those are sort of the main 3 that would sort of serve as the deterrent to Wolverine, Hawkeye, and Wonder Man. And since Hawkeye is really a character that is without powers, he would be the one that would be struggling the most, whereas Laura and Wonder Man would be able to fight the other people a little bit easier. Actually, it's even. I thought it wasn't even at first, but it is even, so ignore what I just said. It would be Wolverine would go against one of the other baddies, Hawkeye would go up against one of the other baddies, and Wonder Man would go up against one of the other baddies. But we would have a main antagonist, and I really wanted a main antagonist that sort of is similar to Red Death, where it is a evil version of Barry in terms of the comics. And I didn't do the entire thing of I'm just making Wolverine, I'm just doing an evil version of Wolverine and they just happen to be wearing Iron Man stuff. I just wanted an evil version of Iron Man. So the main antagonist of the first graphic novel in this season is Tony Stark, aka Superior Iron Man. And this version of Superior Iron Man is actually the subconscious, like an AI of Tony, who was created by Justin Hammer, but just distorted to make evil. And so it's sort of Tony's going up against an AI version of himself who believes he is the superior version of Iron Man and sort of serves more as the antagonistic version of Tony. And it would be Tony, Wolverine, Hawkeye, and Wonder Man teaming up against Superior Iron Man, Living Laser, Firebrand, and Blizzard. And ultimately the heroes would win with Superior Iron Man getting disintegrated and having the AI consciousness of Tony Stark be eliminated completely. And yeah, that would be the 8th graphic novel, and then we go over to the last major story of Iron Man Season 9, where one of the main recurring characters would be Edwin Jarvis, who would return, and I sort of have it in my head where Jarvis would return to England to sort of want to live the remainder of his life back home. Like, seeing as how Tony can handle himself at this point, Jarvis would want to be away from all of this, and Tony would respectfully understand that and allow him to do that. But Jarvis would be coming back to reveal a threat from Tony's past has returned, and this would be where we would get the main antagonist of Temujin Khan, aka the Mandarin. And Temujin Khan was a character that was in Season 3 of Iron Man. He just wasn't the main antagonist. His father, who was the Mandarin at that time, would have been the main antagonist, and just in this season, Temujin Khan is sort of returning as the main antagonist and sort of finally taking his place as the Mandarin, and sort of finally taking the action, full-on attack onto Iron Man, trying to get his revenge for what Tony did to his father, but also finally ready to take over the Ten Rings organization. And I don't have them listed here, but we would have frequent enemies from Tony's past to appear to work with the Mandarin, and Tony would have to go through a gauntlet to take out some of his former foes, and he would need to work with Firestar and Eagle Star. There are a lot of stars. Bill Foster, who would become Goliath this season, and I know this character would have appeared, who is the Wally West analog. He would have just appeared in the middle point of Guardsman. He would have appeared in the interlude, but I would have him return and to help Tony. But not only that, I know the actor, I know Cisco, the actor for Cisco Ramon, wasn't able to return due to scheduling, but I would have War Machine come back as well to help out Tony go up against the Mandarin, and it would be basically Team Iron Man taking down Team Mandarin, and Mandarin basically fully, like, the idea of the Mandarin and the ancestry of the Mandarin and the future of the Mandarin would get eradicated here, because I would have Temujin Khan, like, get disappeared. I don't know how fully yet, but just where he would disappear and the Ten Rings would just be staying on this plane of existence, where Temujin is, like, disappears, and he is basically either thrown forward through time because of the rings or disintegrated because of the rings. It's just the rings are still there, and the idea of the Mandarin is gone and done. And we would end the show with Iron Man fully deciding that everything is safe, like everything that he is needed to do is done, and he would fully hang up the armor and all the armors, and he would live the rest of his days with Pepper. And this season would be where Arno would have been, like, the finale would be where Arno Stark, his eldest son, would be born. And that would be Iron Man Season 9, and that would be the end of the Iron Man series. And then that's when we move on to the Superman and Lois Season 3 analog, which is Spider-Man and MJ Season 3. The main characters are Peter Parker Spider-Man, Mary Jane Watson Parker, Mayday Parker, Miles Morales, Flash Thompson, Jean Thompson, Jeff Morales, Rio Morales, Carly Cooper, Philip Watson, and Liz Allen Thompson. And those are the characters that were returning from prior seasons. But the main antagonist of the show this season, because in Season 3 the main antagonist was Bruno Mannheim, the main antagonist of this season is Joseph Martello, aka Hammerhead. Hammerhead would serve as the main antagonist of the show, with multiple people working for him, like Vincent Mangaro, who would be a recurring character, someone working as one of the science people, and two of the main people that would serve as muscle for Hammerhead are Mark Raxton, aka Molten Man, and Edward Lavelle, aka the Eel. They would sort of serve as muscle against Spider-Man, Mayday, and Miles. And in this show, it's very much more of Peter, May, and Miles are sort of, because in this first season it was more of Mayday season, for her to get adjusted with her recurring cast, and the second season was more Miles, learning more about Miles. And this season, it's them very much together, working together to take down this crime organization held by Hammerhead. Also, we would have the character of Saris Martello, who is inspired by the character of Saris Goldstein. She would be one of the recurring characters, and she would be the wife of Hammerhead. Also, I need to make this specific. She would be race swapped to an Afro-Latino character, mainly because I wanted to have the relationship that one of the characters in season 3 of Superman and Lois, John Henry Irons' daughter Natasha had a romance with Bruno Mannheim's son, and I wanted to have that sort of, and so I decided to have his daughter be Barbara Martello, aka who would be a sort of adaptation of the character of Barbara Rodriguez. Hence why I specified that Saris Martello was Afro-Latino. That way we can still have that with Barbara Martello. And Miles and Barbara would have a romance in this show because Barbara Rodriguez is one of the main love interests of Miles in his original run of comics. And I wanted that to be sort of a relationship that we have here. Felicity Thompson, the youngest daughter of Flash and Liz, she would be a major character. And I wanted to get all those other characters out of the way so we can get to the character who would appear in the final 3 episodes specifically and sort of be the Lex Luthor analog. And that is, of course, Norman Osborn. Throughout the Spider-Gwen show and throughout Spider-Man and MJ, I never mentioned Norman Osborn because I wanted to save it for this moment, because Norman Osborn would be the Lex Luthor analog from Superman and Lois. And Norman Osborn, this would be sort of an idea where Norman Osborn was in jail. Like, people discovered he was the Green Goblin and he went to jail. But now he is getting out of jail because of all the stuff where it would sort of seem like, oh no, he wasn't actually the Green Goblin. It took this long to get evidence that Norman Osborn wasn't, in quotes, the Green Goblin. It was actually someone else. And so Norman Osborn would be getting out of prison, and at this point Norman would know that Peter is Spider-Man. And so he, instead of putting on the green suit, he would have the clone of Kane Parker be revealed, and he would get distorted, sort of like how Bizarro became Doomsday. And there is a character in the comics, in the Marvel comics, who was a clone of Peter named Guardian, and he had long brown hair. He was like ripped. He was like a Doomsday character, and like veins popping out of him. And so Kane would turn into that character of the Guardian clone, and that would be sort of, we would end on Peter fighting the Guardian clone. And it would also to wrap up Hammerhead's story, Hammerhead would be trying to save his wife, but she would die ultimately due to cancer, and Peter and Mayday and Miles would ultimately defeat all the people that are working for Hammerhead. And Hammerhead would realize sort of the error of his ways, for lack of a better term, sort of like how Bruno Mannheim did. And so Hammerhead would go to jail, and then the last few episodes would be Norman Osborn as the sort of next big bad, and leading into what I'm thinking they're doing with season 4, which I believe, I'm not going to touch on Superman and Lois season 4 because that hasn't come out. And so I'm assuming Superman and Lois season 4 is going to be dealing with Lex Luthor as the main antagonist to end their show, which if that is the case, Spider-Man and MJ would have Norman Osborn as Green Goblin as the main antagonist, and that's how I would wrap up the Spider-Man and MJ show and have Peter be more of the center focus, because Norman Osborn is Peter's greatest enemy in my estimation, and so it only makes sense to have Peter be the focus of that final show and have him go up against Norman. And yeah, that is what I would do, how I would end off the Arrowverse if it was Marvel. So yeah, this is sort of bittersweet ending it right here, because I feel like there was so much more that the Arrowverse could give us. I know some people were starting to like get a little bogged down by Arrow and wanted it to, or the Arrowverse, and wanting it to end. but I very much do think that there was a lot of potential for it to continue on if CW wanted it, but CW didn't want it to continue, and so that's why Superman and Lois is very much the last remnant of that era. And yeah, again, what were your thoughts on all of what I did, and what were your thoughts on this episode? I would really love to hear your thoughts. Post them in the comment down below. And again, this is the last video of the year. I don't know what else I'm going to be doing. I thought about maybe doing a live stream on YouTube and talking about some stuff, but I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be doing that. I don't know if I'll even have time to do that. Also, I don't know how I'm going to start the next year. I don't know what video I'm going to start. I have some ideas, and I got some comments about potentially doing a Godzilla pitch. I would love to pitch a Godzilla movie, especially if I got to pitch a Godzilla movie set in the MonsterVerse. I would love to do that. But yeah, I don't have any immediate ideas for Godzilla off the top of my head. Also, when The Legend of Vox Machina Season 3 comes out next year, I will, or hopefully it comes out next year, I will definitely be continuing doing my reactions to that show because I very much love The Legend of Vox Machina. And again, with what I tried to do this year of no matter what, I'm going to be doing just one video a week, and so those would be the videos of the week. I can take breaks doing pitch thises. And yeah, again, everyone, thank you all so much for watching the show, making this little mini series for Pitch This a huge success in terms of the numbers in views and subscribers who came in because of all this. Thank you all so much. Also, thank you everyone who decided to continue watching the What If the MCU Was DCU. Thank you all so much, because I got a lot of views from the Phase 1, and I want to just thank everyone for deciding to continue to watch that one video. It means so much to me. It means a lot to me that you all were willing to do this. And we got to 208 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's really try to get to 300 by the end of the year. 300, that is the number. By December 31st, 2024, I need to get to 300. But again, everyone, thank you all so much for being a part of this journey with me. And again, hit the like button if you like this video, and also hit the subscribe button, because that helps me so much and it keeps you up to date with all the videos I have here on the channel. Also hit the notification bell, that way a new video like this comes your way. But until then, I've been Mr. EliMac, you've been the audience, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.